السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us ilm and nafi', beneficial knowledge. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us firm and يثبتنا على قول الثابت في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة, that He makes us firm upon the steadfast word in this life of this dunya and in the akhirah. Likewise, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala an arina haqqan haqqa wa rizqna ittiba'a, that He shows us the truth and He allows us to follow it. Wa arina batilan batila wa rizqna ijtinaba, and He shows us falsehood for what it is and He allows us to stay away from it. Today, walillah alhamd, we are starting a weekend course. As you can see on the screen, inshallah, hopefully you can all hear me and see the screen. If I can get a few thumbs ups and a few ones in the chat, just to make sure that everybody can hear me fine and see the screen fine, yeah?
Yep.
The other thing, everyone should already have this document. Has everyone got this document? Good, alhamdulillah. So, we're ready to start, walillah alhamd, but before we do, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man lam yashkur an-nas lam yashkurillah." Anybody who doesn't thank the people, then he hasn't thanked Allah. So we have to thank our brother Abu Iyan as part of the Sunnah Project UK. Allah aid him, Allah facilitate for him his affairs, Allah bless him in all of his endeavors. He is now starting an initiative to have more weekend courses, not just with myself, with other mashayikh and tullab al-ilm. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him success in that, and that he makes this as a means of attaining his mercy and his pleasure, and that he places it on his scale of good deeds when he goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, I want to thank you all for attending. It's not always easy, especially when the weather is nice on a Saturday morning, Sunday morning. So you're sacrificing the time that you have with your families for the sake of Allah. But it's a very important sacrifice. As you can see here on the screen, inshallah, we're going to be studying shurut la ilaha illallah. Before we go any further, what is it? Now, okay, as it's been advertised, this is going to be an hour and a half session, I believe, with half an hour for questions. As you can probably already tell, our sessions are very interactive. So you've got a document, everybody is supplied with a document or a book. And if we're in the classroom, you have a projector, you have whiteboards, you have chairs and seats and tables. But unfortunately, we're here on Zoom. Walillah alhamd, Allah has made it easy for us. But we've still got a virtual classroom. So everything is interactive. So I don't want people to leave the questions to the end. Unless if you feel that it's relevant to be asked at the end, or the question comes at the end, or if you've got a general question that you just want to ask, which is away from the topic, okay? So we want to try and make it as interactive as we can. And this is one of the benefits that we learn from the hadith of Jibreel. Jibreel enters and he asks, "Akhbirni al-Islam." All the companions, they knew what Islam was. Umar didn't know what Islam was. He is the narrator of the hadith. "Akhbirni al-Iman, akhbirni al-Ihsan." They didn't know these things. Of course they knew these things. But the fa'idah, what is the benefit? Jibreel knew it. He was the one asking the question. Muhammad ﷺ knew it, and he was the one answering the question. But what was the benefit? The benefit was so that other people can benefit. Me and you can benefit until Yawm al-Qiyamah, as long as that hadith continues in circulation and continues to be narrated on and learned and studied and passed on. That question and answer has so much barakah. So it could be that you've got a question in your head and it brings about a lot of khair. So our sessions are interactive. Okay, so now let's start with that introduction. Shurut la ilaha illallah. Before we get into the shurut section, the conditions, what is la ilaha illallah? Anybody got any suggestions as to what is the Shahada, la ilaha illallah? As it says here, look, we've even translated it as Shahada, but in the Arabic it says la ilaha illallah. Why is there a difference? This is important to the question I'm asking because of the fact that we're trying to establish from the outset, what is it that we aim to get from these 2 days? Okay, so what is La ilaha illallah? Or what do we aim to study when it comes to La ilaha? Testify there is only one Lord worthy of worship. Barakallahu fiqh. That is La ilaha illallah. But here, why have we written Shahada then? Is that a mistake on our part? There is no God except Allah. Okay, we're going to touch upon that. Is that sufficient for us to say La ilaha illallah? The statement and actions which enters one into Islam, that is very good. And that is, I would accept that. I think that's probably the closest to what I had in my mind. What we mean by this course here, La ilaha illallah, is the Shahada, which is the testimony, which is the first pillar of our Islam. And that's what we aim to study here. Okay, not the intricates of the testimony of there being one Lord who is worthy of worship, not the intricates of that, no. We are here to look at what is this testimony and how do I make sure that I am fulfilling that testimony. I've just given the answer to the next question. What is a condition? What's a shart? What do we mean by the shart? If the host can make the microphone available as well for people if they wanted to contribute verbally, I don't know if that's an option, but Barakallah feekum. What's a shart? What do we mean now? I mean, what is the condition of like? So is it that we're here to study the conditions of there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah? Or are we here to look at the conditions of Tawheed? Are we here to look at the conditions of Allah being one? Are we here to look at the conditions of what is shirk, properly, the opposite, a prerequisite for Shahada to be accepted? Imran.
Is it to verbalize, to announce?
Shahada is to verbalize and announce linguistically, yes. But what is it that you're announcing? That's the correlation now that we see here. So there is, there is a connection between the way we've translated La ilaha illallah and the Shahada, because this Shahada here is talking about the testimony of what? La ilaha illallah. So it's not just any testimony. So there is a description as to what we are doing with La ilaha illallah in this course, which is we are testifying, we are witnessing that there is no God that is worthy of worship except Allah, no deity worthy of worship except Allah. So here our focus is not on the La ilaha illallah. Our focus is on the Shahada, the testimony, the witnessing, right? So that's the first thing. So that's the first question that we've asked. So here we are looking at what it means to testify. So like the sister said there, what it means, she's saying here, the statement and actions which allow a person to enter into Islam is close, but here we are looking at when you are making a testimony, what is it that you need for that testimony to be successful? And we're going to give some examples, but this is what we're trying to get across right now is the aim of the course. Okay, so here, testimony. What is a testimony? How can you testify to this powerful statement? But then we've got conditions. What do we mean by conditions? So this is the second part, which adds to the aims. You see the title of something, if you read a book, if you attend a course, whether it's religious or irreligious, whether it's, dunyawi, academic, the title of what you are going to read, the article, the lecture, whatever, it should then define the aim of what you are going now to study or listen to. Okay, and this is the world that we live in. We live in a world of clickbait, and is that what they call it? Clickbait and all this different, misinterpretation of what is yet to come. This is not honest. But in Islamic literature, at least, the title should be representative of the aim. That's why you can find some books by the ulama, the title is extremely long because it represents the aim. So now the person who is going to buy that book, who's going to study that book, they know full well what is yet to come, what they are buying, perhaps even, and what they're getting into, So conditions of Shahada. We've established Shahada here refers to the testimony. Conditions is to witness through the creation. Okay, so now if you don't witness through the creation, your Shahada is not valid. Is that what we mean? So imagine you got a blind man and he never sees anything, not to commit shirk. So the condition of Shahada is not to do the opposite. And that's it. As long as you don't commit shirk, you've got La ilaha illallah. Is that what we mean by that?
So the keyword's witness, isn't it?
The key word is witness, but that's on the right-hand side. But what is a condition? Maryam.
Yeah, things that we need to have in order for the Shahada to be accepted.
Excellent. Conditions are the things that you need to have in order for it to be valid. The things that you need, that's perfect. The things that you need to have, the things. Because we're looking at the plurality of conditions. So it has to be something which validates your testimony. And that's what we're studying here. Okay? If a person thinks here we're going to study what is La ilaha illallah, that is mistaken. If a person is going to study, if a person thinks that we're going to study here Tawheed, then that is wrong. If a person thinks that we're going to study here Shirk, then that is wrong. If a person thinks that we're going to study here the types of Tawheed, the three branches of Tawheed, all of that is not included here. Why? Because the title in itself defines for us that the conditions are the things that are needed to validate your La ilaha illallah, your Shahada, your testimony. As we can see in the English, there is no connection in the English I'm looking at here. There is no connection between those validators with La ilaha illallah. We are only solely concentrating on the act of testimony and witnessing to the oneness of Allah. We are not discussing what it means to have the oneness of Allah. We are not discussing what it means to negate the oneness of Allah. All of that is in a separate book, in a separate course, in a separate setting, whatever you want to call it, in a separate lecture, whatever you want to call it. And there are plenty of books for that. So you've got Qawaid al-Arba', you've got Usul al-Thalatha, you've got Kashf al-Shubahat, you've got something perhaps more extensive, Kitab al-Tawheed, Aqid al-Wasatiyya, Aqid al-Tahawiyya. All of those are concerning the meaning of La ilaha illallah and elaborating it further. You with me on that? So now when you look at al-Wasatiyya, when you look at al-Tahawiyya, when you look at Usul al-Sunnah of Imam Ahmad, all of those, these are books of Aqidah which talks about the unseen. Primarily they'll start talking about what it means to believe in Allah, La ilaha illallah, what it means to affirm Rububiyyah and Uluhiyyah and the Asma wa Sifat, that we affirm for him, what he has affirmed for himself, and all of those things. All of those things in a separate sitting all together. Here, the aim of this 2-day course is to establish what it means. What do I need in order for my testimony to actually be valid and accepted with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And not the details of what that testimony is. That is in a separate book, separate session. Okay, any questions so far with that? Good. So, like I said, all of you should have this document already. Let's start. It says it in English, shart. Shart refers to the condition. What is a condition according to the ulama of the Sharia? What is a condition? So they defined it, the ulama of usul, and now we have to go back to the usul for both of these because the ulama of usul al-fiqh are the ulama of definitions. The ulama of usul al-fiqh are the ulama of definitions. Yes, of course, you've got different sciences. They will have their own definitions, but probably the most profound of those definitions are given by the ulama of usul. Why? When we talk about usul, we're talking about the fundamentals of the Sharia, the principles, the cogs, and the mechanics of how the Sharia works, how to derive, how to understand, how to analyze, how to make an analogy. All of that comes through the field of usul al-fiqh. Sorry, I just saw your message. Yes, exactly that, Imran. It's basically what we're studying here are the fundamentals of what it is to testify. Not the testimony itself, not what negates the testimony, the fundamentals, the things, the principles needed to make sure that your testimony is in the right place and that your testimony is valid and your testimony will be accepted with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we're going to elaborate that, inshallah. Okay, so now I think perhaps today we're going to talk about the definitions. Today we're going to talk about a bit more of the technicalities. And then inshallah, tomorrow we're going to look at the 7 or perhaps 8 conditions that have been given by the ulama. So we can split it up into into those two. Okay, it could be that we start some of the conditions today. We'll see how it goes for time, but this is what I got in my mind, is that what we'll do is today we'll do all the technical stuff, and then tomorrow we'll go into the actual conditions one by one. There's only 7, 8 according to some, as we will see. It was explained later, but we've presented 7 in the document, and I think that should be sufficient anyhow. And inshallah we'll do that tomorrow. So now, the definition of a condition. What is a condition? The ulama of usul, they've said, ma yalzam min adamihi al-adam. Ma yalzam min adamihi al-adam. In English, if this thing is not present, then the follow-up thing, the thing that is needed to establish the secondary thing, will also not be present. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Can somebody give me an example of a shart then, of a condition?
So in Salah, the pillars.
Okay, so now the pillars, is that part of the thing?
Or the wudu. You need wudu.
Why did you say wudu now, not the pillars?
Because without the wudu, nothing's counted after.
Excellent. So you changed your mind because of the fact that this condition is needed because there is a follow-up action. So there is an action that is needed in order for the secondary action to stand. For nikah, a woman needs a wali. Excellent. Without a wali, without the witnesses, without the ard al-qubul, without the proposal and the acceptance, there is no nikah. These things are needed. Oh, sorry, the ard al-qubul will be part of the nikah ceremony itself, but the conditions, sorry, the witnesses and the wali would be the conditions. And without that, she can't get married. Let's take one more. So now, without the wali and without the witnesses, the follow-up action, which is the nikah process, where she goes to the imam of the masjid and says, listen, I want to get married to this man, etc. There will be no nikah. So she has to wait, and she has to make sure that the conditions are there in order for that follow-up action to be established. So she has to go out of her way to find a wali if she hasn't got a wali, or she has to speak to her father and get him to come to the masjid, or something. Something needs to be done before the nikah can be accepted. Sawm Ramadan. What do you mean Sawm Ramadan? Ayn al-shart fi Sawm Ramadan. Entering into ihram. What is that a condition of? Entering into ihram is a condition for Hajj or Umrah. Perfect. So if a person hasn't got ihram and he's not past the miqat, and he's not got the ihram, and he's not past the miqat, and he's not formed his intention, then there is no pilgrimage for that person. That is because the condition needs to be set. And then there's khilaf as to whether he should go back or whether he should sacrifice, etc. But I mean, if there's no intention, then there is no pilgrimage. Sawm Ramadan, we've got a person here saying Sawm Ramadan. What's that a condition of? What do you need a condition? Okay, so let's reverse it. So somebody's given the answer, which is Ramadan. What are the conditions for Ramadan, fasting in Ramadan, to be valid? Imran. Niyyah, number 1. Niyyah before the fasting begins. Number 2.
Naam, Ustadh. Al-Islam.
Al-Islam, excellent. Number 3.
Maturity.
Maturity, excellent. Number 4.
Correct time, as in it needs to be in Ramadan, not outside.
Excellent. So the month has to be established. And we can go on to gain the pleasure, ikhlas, intention, exactly. And we can go on. So these are conditions. Okay, so now we understand what our condition is. This thing is needed for the follow-up action. So what we are studying here today are the principles, the things which are needed in order for your shahada, your testimony of la ilaha illallah to be valid. And without these conditions, it will not be valid. What is a shahada? Now, a shahada linguistically means the testimony, to announce, as you can see here, to verbalize something. الإخبار بما شاهده فالشاهد العالم الذي يبين ما يعلمه ويظهر. Meaning in English, and this is from Lisan al-Arab, which is a well-known dictionary of terminologies in the Arabic language. The Moon has cited, excellent. Which is that if a person wants to announce something or verbalize their testimony towards something, as you can see here in the English, it has to have the prerequisite of knowledge of something. العالم الذي يبين ما يعلمه ويظهره. He is aware of what he is witnessing. He is aware of the situation. He is aware of the thing that he is saying. والمشاهدة معاينة وشاهد شهودة. And he goes on to talk about the different forms in the semantical form of what a witness is. But what he is saying in essence is that a person can only be classed as witnessing to something if he has two things. What are the two things that he is mentioning here? Linguistically.
To verbalize and have knowledge.
Okay, so number one, there's a verbalization of it. So that basically means if a person says, you know what, I believe in something, or I have witnessed something, until they verbalize it, there is no witnessing. It's just a thought. Yeah, so even now here, an announcement, verbalization of it, it's the same thing, except that the announcement would be more public. It'd be large scale. But a verbalization, as with the ulama, with the fuqaha, there is no disagreement that if a person verbalizes la ilaha illallah, he's a Muslim. He doesn't need to announce it and publicize it. But if he does, obviously it's better. So that's the first thing. It cannot be a thought. It cannot be a passing, suggestion in his head. It can't be something which, just is not verbalized. A shahada, a witnessing to something. Again, we're not just talking about la ilaha illallah. We're not just talking about aqidah right now. We're just talking about what is a witnessing, what is a testimony. So in the Arabic language here, with the ulama, the fuqaha, a witnessing can only be something which is verbal. And the second thing is knowledge. And without knowledge, that person cannot verbalize what they have seen. If they were to verbalize something and say, oh, I saw this person doing X, Y, and Z, but they don't really have knowledge of it, that's not a witness and that's not a testimony, and it will never be accepted. In actual fact, that person could then even be punished. فَجْلِدُوهُمْ ثَمَانِينَ جَلْدَةً, Allah tells us. Lash them 80 times if they were to witness something that they didn't witness. Allah musta'an. Allah helps us and protects us from his anger and his punishment. So now this is knowledge. Now, but also we have here something which can be sensed. Meaning they have a verbalization of something which is known to them. It is based on knowledge. And it is something which has some kind of proof behind it. So if a person was to say, I witness that 1 + 1 = 3. You say to that, so you say to the Akhi, 1 + 1 = 3. Yes, 100%. I'm fully aware of it. I attended the class yesterday and I had my teacher say 1 + 1 = 3. 100%. That person is verbalizing it and they are making knowledge of it. They are, affirming knowledge of it, but it is not something which is in accordance to the reality of the situation. Maybe there's a mistake. Maybe there's an agenda, maybe something sinister behind it. Allah knows best. But that witnessing would not be valid then because of an impediment that exists. So that's something which can be sensed, could be a flaw in the thing that they thought they saw, or it could be a flaw in the person who is claiming what they said they saw. With me so far? So what is a condition? Does it mean that it has to be proven? It means it has to be in reality. It has to be in reality of the situation. So perhaps it has to be proven, depending, and we're going to get to that now. Or it could be something which is known, as in, for example, I saw the sun come up today, and it wasn't very cloudy. And I saw the sun come up today for the first time after a very long time, and it was very nice, and the color of the sky and everything was very nice. Now, do you need for me to prove that to you? I've verbalized it. I've explained that I've got knowledge of this thing that I've observed. And is it something that you think that is likely that I saw? Yeah, I mean, there's no impediment in accepting that testimony. So that's what we're talking about here. The highlighted part here, something which can be sensed, meaning that there's no impediments. There's nothing which is going to, disturb the fact that you are going to take this testimony. Okay, so he's verbalized it, or she's verbalized it. It's based on knowledge, but like we said, 1 + 1 = 3. That's not knowledge. So we can sense that this person has made a mistake. Either they've not understood it right, or it's a slip of the tongue. Whatever the case, there is an impediment from us accepting that witnessing. So those are the 3 parts here now which are needed for the Shahada to be upright. So now, before we move on, linguistically, what do we mean by a condition? Something
that needs to be present and followed up with actions. Or
I'll say that again. Something that needs to be present
and then followed up in the order.
Okay, so something needs to be present in order for the follow-up action to be present. Yeah. So something which needs to be there in order for ma yalzam min adamihi al-adam, meaning if that thing is not there, then the follow-up action will not be there. If wudu is not there, then the follow-up action will not be there. If ihram is not there, or niyyah is not there, then the pilgrimage will not be there. If it's still Sha'ban, then Ramadan will not be there. Fasting Ramadan will not be there. That's a condition. Okay, Jubaid?
Could you say that if the thing wasn't present, the follow-up action wouldn't be accepted, or wouldn't be there? Could you say that?
It could be acceptance, but if we say not there, adamihi al-adam, then that is more profound. Because of the fact that it won't be accepted and it will not be valid. I mean, it will not be accepted and it will not be present at the same time. But if a person was to say, yeah, I mean, I think that's more profound because of the fact that, look, if a person doesn't have wudu and he prays salah, then that salah in effect is not there. Islamically, it's not there. So if a person prays dhuhr without wudu, do we say to him, you're forgiven, you're overlooked because it was a mistake or whatever? No, it's as if the person has not prayed. So we would say it's probably better for us to say not there, because that includes not valid. So if a person doesn't have wudu, then the salah is not going to be there. If a person is not concerned about his tahara internally and externally, would he ever have the idea or the hidayah or the wanting or the ikhlas or the intention to pray in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Understand how many people are there? Their lives are full of najasa on their tongue, najasa in their heart, najasa in their actions. How is it possible that they can stand in front of Allah and say with sincerity, Allahu Akbar? How is it possible that they want to go to the bathroom and wash off the sins from their hands and put nur on their face? Because that's what in essence you're doing when you make wudu. You're putting nur on your face, you're putting nur on your limbs. What is the impediment? The impediment is that the shart is not there. What is the shart? The softness of that heart. Therefore, I would say min adamihi al-adam is better. You know why? Because if that ikhlas is not there in the first place, then there will be no desire to do that act of ikhlas in following up. But it can also mean that the person wants to do the action with ikhlas, but there has been a mistake or an oversight or whatever, and they will be overlooked. I mean, that action will be overlooked for them. It won't be sinful. رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا إِن نَسِينَا أَوْ أَخْطَأْنَا. But it will be as if the action has not been done. Okay, so that's the condition, that's the shart. What is a testimony? Linguistically, what do we refer to as a testimony? a statement. It has to be something which is verbal. Yes. Actually, statement is better because it doesn't have to be something which is verbalized. I mean, a testimony could be written down, so to speak, but it is a witnessing, it is an announcement probably. Yes. With, is that enough? All we need to do is witness and that's sufficient.
With knowledge.
العالم الذي يبين ما يعلمه ويظهره. He is absolutely certain with knowledge as to the thing that he is saying that he saw and witnessed, but it's also something, والمشاهدة المعاينة is something that can be sensed as well at the same time. Linguistically, this is the end of our discussion there, but technically now this is important because this gives us the technical understanding of the Sharia, of how witnessing works. And the example that we're going to give are from the 4 different madhahib, the Hanafis and the Malikis and the Shafi'is and the Hanbalis, as to how they affirm witnessing when it comes to criminality and judiciary. So again, we are connected to looking at what witnessing is in the linguistic sense, but now we're looking at it a bit more technically, and it is connected to the linguistics anyhow. And before we go any further, these are the 4 madhabs that are very well recognized, they are very well respected. If a person follows them, he is not sinful for doing so. However, and each one of these, you know, give you the practicalities of how you should be following your religion. The purpose of these madhahib are that they are schools of opinion and study and research as to how a person should be doing the practical aspects of his religion. So the Hanafis will say, you pray in this manner. The Malikis say, no, you pray in this manner. And the Shafi'is say one thing and the Hanbalis say another thing. So what they are doing is they are researching and they are establishing for us what they think is the correct way of doing the practical aspects of your religion. But their aqeedah all was one. Their manhaj on how they used to understand the religion all was one. So they all said you take from the Quran and the Sunnah an understanding of the Salaf. They didn't differ in that. And at the same time, they all said, every single one of these madhabs have said that our opinion here is not binding upon anyone. We don't think you should be a Hanafi because you come from a Hanafi background. We don't think that you should be Maliki because we have the correct view because we're from Medina. You don't think that we are Shafi'i because we are the larger number of, you know, scholars of fiqh and usul. And the Hanbalis are the, you know, people who represent Ahl al-Hadith, etc. We don't say those kind of things. And none of the madhabs even said those things. In actual fact, each one of those madhabs have said, you need to ask the ulama and the tullab al-ilm and the people that can get you that knowledge in the locality of where you are or whoever you have access to. And that is what is wajib upon every single one of us. But here we will see something which is really profound, which unfortunately escapes a lot of the Muslims. As Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said, that these 4 madhabs have more in common than their differences amongst them. And that's true. Is any one of the madhabs say that you don't need to have wudu to pray, that you don't need to face the qibla to pray, that you don't need to stand to pray, that you don't need to make ruku' in your salah, you don't need to make sujood in your salah, that you don't need to pray 5 times, etc. Yes, they've differed on the things which do not affect the validity of the prayer. But for the large part, the understanding of the religion is very similar. And as we will see. So now, technically, this is important, okay? May Allah protect us and the Muslims, but it's unfortunate that it's happening in our communities. If somebody has wronged you, or you perhaps have wronged someone else, wouldn't you want justice to prevail? Just recently, we've had a number of people that have been stabbed here in our local area, Leicester. Have mercy on those people that have passed away and forgive those and guide those who perpetrated those crimes. But we want justice, don't we? We want that, you know, their families can have some kind of closure, and that justice prevails at the end of the day. We don't like dhulm. And the reason why we're mentioning this now is that imagine you got a person, and this is actually happening in one of the cases that I know of, that they forged and they got fake witnesses and they started saying stuff, and that affected, Allah knows best what happened in the end, but that affected, you know, some part of the trial. Wouldn't we be upset by that if that happened to us? Wouldn't we sense that we have done something extremely wrong? That imagine you've harmed someone and then you've lied about covering it up so that you wouldn't go to jail. Therefore, this section here is looking at something which is actual and practical and very relevant in our lives. And it helps us understand where we are, if we are criminal to the witnessing that we have in our religion or not. If we are being criminal towards our witnessing of La ilaha illallah. So technically, now witnessing, like we've said here in the brackets, refers to criminality. Therefore, the Shahada in our topic is in its linguistic sense. So now what we're saying here is that all of these are examples of something which is specific to criminality. So now if you saw someone doing a crime, these are what the madhahib have said. However, in our discussion, really, this is sufficient. In our discussion, this is sufficient. But there is a reason why I'm going to go through these, because you got a task there. Okay, and this goes back to what one of the people said earlier, is that La ilaha illallah is to recognize the oneness of Allah. Okay, so the Hanafi madhab, they have said when it comes to witnessing a crime, al-ikhbar an amrin, hadaruhu al-shuhud wa shahidu, imma mu'ayana kal-af'al, nahu al-qatl wa zina, aw sama'an kal-uqud wal-iqrarat. The Hanafis say that a person can only be a witness to a crime or to an event even if he saw either the action or he witnessed statements such as a contract or a person making a confession or an agreement or something similar. Okay, so the Hanafis are saying here that a person witnesses something, and again this is with ilm, as you have seen with the linguistic definition, with ilm and with, what was the third thing?
Has to be sensed.
Has to be sensed. It's realistic. It's you know, it's realistic that he saw that and he was there. Yeah. So the Hanafis have said that witnessing is of the action itself or a statement that's been agreed upon or something similar. The Malikis have said, Shahada qawl huwa, meaning it's the statement of him, a person, بحيث يوجب على الحاكم سماع الحكم بمقتضاه إن عدل قائله مع تعدده أو خلف طالبه. The Malikis have said that the Qadi, the judge, will accept this person's hearing or witnessing of this thing that he has said that he has witnessed, and he will base his decision, the Qadi will base his decision on the strength of his testimony. So either he has people that support him. So now we know that, you know, in a crime, usually 2 witnesses are required, or certain crimes 4 witnesses are required. So now the Malikis are saying here the Qadi will only accept a witnessing if it fulfills criterion with him, meaning that this person is somebody who is reliable and he's come within the number which is required, etc. Is there any difference between the Hanafis and the Malikis? Semantically, perhaps, but really in application, not really. The Shafi'is, they said that Shahada, witnessing to something, ikhbar al-shakhs, that a person, you know, proclaims the information bihaq ala ghayrihi bilafdhin khas, that he says that I have a right over this person with a specific wording. This is about criminality, but you can see how it relates to our topic of Aqidah, of La ilaha illallah. As you can see, the Hanafis are talking about verbalizing, including actions, including statements. That's all included. The Malikis are talking about quality being there. And part of the qualities that they have said, you know, it has to meet the certain number that are required. The Shafi'is are saying the rights of one person over another with a specific wording. So now imagine if a person says, yeah, I took it and I didn't give it back. Is that specific? No, that's not specific with the Qadi. What did you take? If the criminal confesses, yes, I took it, but we are talking about something else, that's not bilafdhin khas. So the Shafi'i will say, will ask you to elaborate. What is it that you took? Are you confirming that you took his mobile phone on that night? And then when he confirms, then that's it. Then that is the confession which has been established. That's with the Shafi'is. The Hanbalis, a Shahada is, Shahada, testimony, witnessing is, al-Ikhbar bima alimahu al-Shahid bilafdhin khas. And again, the Hanbalis are very similar in this because they are saying, except that the Shafi'is have said the right of one person over the other. بِحَقٍّ عَلَى الْغَيْرِ. But the Hanabila here are saying information of something he knew and he witnessed. So knowledge and witnessing, similar to what we saw before in the definition. بِلَفْظٍ khas, meaning with a specific wording, كَشَهَدْتُ or ashhad, meaning I saw or I witnessed or I witnessed, something like that. Clear, he's not like we said with the example that we just gave a moment, he's not playing around, he's not beating around the bush. He's saying clearly, this is what I saw this person do on that night, and he did X, Y, and Z. Now, what can we gather from these four definitions? The Hanafis are saying here, it has to be based on knowledge, connected to actions and statements. The Malikis are saying that there are certain qualities and properties that we expect in a testimony, otherwise it will not be accepted. The Shafi'is are saying here that it includes the right of person X over person Y. The Hanabila are saying the same thing, except that they are saying that it has to come with a specific wording and it has to be based on knowledge. In essence, there's no real difference at all between what these ulama are saying. But let's go to our task now. Task number one. I want you now, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to think about these four. I don't know if you've read this already, but read these four. Based on what we have already established, which one is the closest to a testimony and a shahada? Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes. And I don't want you just to think, okay, well, I think it's number one, or I think it's number three, or number two. I want you to analyze what's going on here, because the next question will be for an explanation. So number one, number two, number three, number four, have a look at what's going on there, and then give me a reason in 2 minutes, inshallah. Is 2 minutes enough? I think 2 minutes should be enough, inshallah. 53. Yeah, but I want you to think, why, Akhi Muhammad? Okay, are we ready? What do you think? Okay, so now the question is, which of the four truly represent the testimony that we are trying to establish here in the principles of La ilaha illallah? We've understood what a condition is. A condition is needed. So there are certain things needed in order for this Shahada to be accepted. So what we are studying today is, what is a testimony? And what are the conditions needed for that testimony? So now each one of these statements has conditions within them. But based on the definition and the examples that we just gave when it came to criminality and how Islamic law briefly works when it comes to witnessing, we can now understand which one, bi'idhnillah, is the closest to the topic that we are talking about now. Because remember, the Sharia works consistently. So if we're saying that we're a witness in one scenario, that witnessing would have the same sort of implication and conditions and prerequisites needed in another scenario. It's no real difference. So already, alhamdulillah, we've got a lot of number fours coming in. Okay, so that's good. I mean, like I said, that's very good. It's good that you've got an answer, but the main thing is do we have a reason? Do we have an explanation? Okay, recognition alone, such as a person who knows a crime is being committed but didn't witness it. Is that Shahada? Is that testimony? Anybody here feels that number one is the closest to what we are trying to establish here? No one, not one. Not even you, Nahid, no? Why not? The question here is why not? Why do we think that recognition alone is not sufficient?
The knowledge and the verbal or the speech is missing.
Okay, so now the person knows the crime is taking place, but he didn't witness it. So there's no sensing, and then there's no verbalization. So it's as if the person internally, he knows. So now you can see, so for example, outside your house, people are listening to music. People are doing drugs. People are doing whatever haram they're doing. Or it could be even good. It doesn't have to be negative. People are praying salah, inshallah. Listening to Quran, inshallah. Okay, good. So you know that's going on outside, but you don't know who it is. You don't know how many there are. You don't know why they're doing it. You don't know how long they're doing it for, but you just know that it's going on. And perhaps you might then just draw your curtains and think, I don't want to hear this. I want to do something else. So then you stop sensing it. So now, can you then witness and say, you know what, it happened between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock on a Saturday night and they were doing X, Y, and Z? So the answer is no, that is not sufficient for a Shahada. We're going to get to that, Mir. Jazakallah khair. We're going to get to how this affects our Aqidah. How does he know if he didn't witness it? He knows, he can sense it. He knows that it's going on outside, but he didn't witness who is doing it. He didn't witness what exactly is going on. He just knows that it's happening. Does that make sense? Therefore, the witnessing, so the verbalization would not be accepted because the person would be asked to explain what was going on. So there was no details. That's what we mean by the witnessing here. Okay, so what we mean by the witnessing is the details and just general knowledge of it happening. Okay, so he knows it's happening, but there's no details to it. So now if a person was to verbalize, imagine now if a person was to verbalize, you know what, I actually saw and I knew this was going on. Now, they could end up lying and say, yeah, this person was doing it and that person was doing it. Or they could act on their assumption and say, I think it was my neighbor. He's always there on that corner doing whatever. Or you could just be truthful and say, you know what, I know, but I don't know the details. I know, but I don't know the details. So there's three scenarios that come out of this one here. Yeah? You with me on that? So the person could say he's truthful and he says he knows, but he doesn't know details. It could be that the person ends up lying. Or it could be that the person, what did we say? What did we say? I forgot myself. It could
Make assumptions.
Assumptions, jazakallah khair. It makes assumptions. Now, this is important to our discussion. Why is it important to our discussion? Because is it sufficient now that a person makes a recognition alone and then that is included as being the Shahada?
It's deficient.
It's deficient in what way? Because either now he says, look, I do know and I am safe and I am firm and I am a Muslim and I'm going to Jannah. And in actual fact, I'm very close to Allah because I recognize Allah. But I don't know the details because he hasn't witnessed. He hasn't witnessed what the Quran, the Sunnah, and the Dalil and all these things say. He hasn't got the details. Therefore, when you ask him to witness and bear witness with detail as to what he knows, he doesn't have it. He doesn't have it. Therefore, that person would sometimes end up lying. Sometimes there'll be an assumption saying, I think I'll be all right though. Yeah, I don't know it, but I think I'll be all right. But sometimes some people say, you know what, Akhi, I don't know. And I wish I knew. Or I don't know, and I'm happy that I don't know.
Could it be like, in other religion, they recognize Allah, but they don't accept our prophet? So could it be like, they recognize, but they don't witness our prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the prophet of Allah?
It could be. But here our discussion is of La ilaha illallah, not La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasul. It's not the Shahadatain. It's just the Shahada. But we can still apply what you're saying. So this goes back to what you were actually saying earlier. Barakallah fiqh. Is it now sufficient for a person to say La ilaha illallah, Shahada La ilaha illallah means that I recognize Allah exists, or I recognize the oneness of a God? Is that sufficient?
It's not sufficient.
It'll never be
as
sufficient.
we
Why
know.
not?
Because it includes actions and what you speak on the tongue.
Excellent. But here in what we've got here, but they have got actions perhaps, and they are attesting, because you find a lot of people who say, I do believe in a higher deity, and I work, and I'm a good Muslim, I'm a good human being, and I work towards making him happy, and hopefully at the point of death he'll be pleased with me. There are so many agnostics like that, loads. But what we are saying here is not in their heart. It might be in their heart. They might actually genuine. But what we are saying here, the witnessing is not sufficient. Your witnessing here is not sufficient. The details are not sufficient. It's not sufficient with what we say in Islam. As we know from the Quran and the Sunnah, you have not fulfilled the conditions of what you are saying that you recognize. And that's why we are discussing, inshallah, probably most likely tomorrow, the 7 things needed so that you are not in a state of just recognition. Do you get that? And this is the view of the Murji'ah. And this is the view of the Ash'ariyah. And this is the view of the Maturidiyya. Recognition alone is sufficient. And you are Muslim. And some of them might even go to the extent that your Iman is the same as Jibreel and Abu Bakr, as long as you recognize Allah. What's their evidence? Qul, for example, Qul huwa Allahu ahad. Allah says, say Allah is one. Does Allah say witness Allah is one? Does Allah say know the details of Allah is one? Does Allah say act upon Allah is one? Just say it, meaning just recognize. But you can see that is batil. And you can see that is false. And we know that through the surah itself and through other evidences. But we don't want to go into that right now. It's already 11 o'clock. But this is the first group of people. This group of people say recognition is enough. And then, like we've said here, as an implication of that, they might end up feeling safe. They might end up having nifaq, lying about their iman, but they know that they don't really fulfill the criterion. Or they're just happy in their state of jahl. And they say, look, if you ask them, Akhi, do you know about la ilaha illallah? No, I don't know about ilaha illallah. Do you want to do something about it? Yeah, inshallah, one day. How many people are like that? But they will say, no, I don't know enough. I don't know what these conditions that you were telling me about. Where are you making this up from? You Salafis are always making stuff up. Well, almost done. And that's the next point. That's the next section. Where does this come from? Has it got any precedence on the Salaf? These 7 that we're going to talk about? Right. So that's the first group. So that's why it's wrong. It's easy for us just to tick and think, yeah, you know what? I know it. But this is part of the course. This is part of what we are studying. We need to know the details. Number 2, who goes with number 2? Knowledge alone, such as a person who witnesses a crime. So now this is different to recognition. Why? Because he knows it's going on. He opens up the windows. He looks at their faces. He recognizes those faces. And then he doesn't do anything about it. So he has knowledge of the crime. He's witnessed the crime, but he doesn't come forward. He has knowledge of the crime. He witnesses the crime, but he doesn't testify. Is that a testimony? In the court of law from the different madhahib, would you be happy if that happened to you? Allah protect us and protect you all and protect the Muslims from any kind of oppression. Knowledge alone. And for the sake of saving time here, we will say no, and the answers are the same, even though it could be expanded, but the answers are the same, which is that the person this is a form of irja, where he has left Islam in his heart. He knows some detail. Had he had full detail, then he wouldn't have just just remained reserved and not come forward. And that is the same form of irja. Speech alone. So now a person comes forward and says, I saw it. But he doesn't really have knowledge. He may have witnessed certain things, but he doesn't know the details of what's gone on. But he comes forward anyhow. And this is another form of irja, and this is known as irja of the kullabiyya. I don't know if you've heard of them before. If you haven't, it's not a big deal. But this is what the kullabiyya say. And some of the ulama have said that this is the worst form of testifying to something when you don't actually have it. Because at least in the first 2, there's some iman, we can say. We will not say that iman is sufficient, but there is something there that they have inside. And perhaps Allah knows best. On Yawm al-Qiyamah, they might even have an excuse. Allah knows best. But this one is so dangerous because it makes the munafiq into the mu'min. Because if a person says speech alone is sufficient for shahada, then inside doesn't matter. Ikhlas doesn't matter. And a person could be harboring nifaq and kufr. Nifaq basically meaning that he claims to be a Muslim externally, but internally he doesn't really believe. So externally he's a Muslim either for whatever reason, culturally, to attain politics, to attain fame, to attain whatever it is. And this is what they did at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Many people became Muslim just for the sake of dunyawi reasons, so that they could be safe, so that Muhammad ﷺ doesn't attack them. They were always in a state of fear. يَحْسَبُونَ كُلَّ سَيْحَةٍ عَلَيْهِمْ, as Allah says. They think that every kind of wave is against them. Therefore, they used to make a testimony with the tongue only. And the ulama have said that this is probably one of the worst forms of testimony. Muhammad, you got a question? Therefore, we have gone with number 4. Everybody, mashallah, alhamdulillah, has gone with number 4. We've got a statement here. The mushrikun know that there is Allah, but they still associate. So number 1 is incorrect. Exactly. So knowledge isn't sufficient. Recognition isn't knowledge. Recognition. No, what they mean by recognition is that they recognize that there is a God, but they don't know the details of it. They recognize of an existence of a deity and they know that much, but they don't know the further details beyond that. And that's what the Murji'ah say is sufficient for a person to be a Muslim. if a person recognizes that something exists out there that's created me, that's sufficient. Why? Qul huwa Allahu ahad. Say Allah is one. Say, meaning that's the emphasis here, not on the Allah is one, Allah understand. That's where we have got the emphasis. We've got the emphasis on all of it, but they are on just the qul part, meaning recognize. But the correct view, as we have said, is number 4. You need to have knowledge. You need to verbalize what you know. You have to base that knowledge and that verbalization on some form of witnessing, which are the conditions that we are talking about. So it has to be a full package. It has to be a full, and they have to work simultaneously with one another. Why? Because Ahl Sunnah are in total agreement and ijma' that al-Iman, i'tiqad, wal-qawl, wal-amal. And some of them said al-Iman, jinsul amal, meaning your Iman is internal and external. You can't have just internal Iman, which is recognition and knowledge. And you can't just have Iman, which is external, which is just speech and perhaps even action, but there is nothing internal. Your Shahada of affirming the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is based on what you know inside and what you have outside. And there are certain things which you need to have inside in order for your testimony of saying, I believe in the oneness of Allah to be valid. And there are certain things which are needed outside in order for you to say, I believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only deity that deserves to be worshipped because He is my creator and He is my sustainer and He is the one who will resurrect me and He is the one who will recompense me for what I did. All of that can only be valid if He's got certain external aspects of his shahada. And that could be verbalization, that could be actions on the jawarih, on the tongue, on the limbs, etc. But the question now, so now here's the question. What is the difference between number 3 and number 4? So number 3, we said, they are quite similar if you look at it on, at just one glance. Number 3, let me just put it on one page. Number 3 and number 4. What is the difference between number 3 and number 4? So number 3, it says here, Shahada is speech alone, such as a person who witnesses something and then testified. He witnessed it and he testifies. But number 4, excellent. Number 4, there is knowledge and there is speech and there is, the person that absorbed it and then he witnesses. Number 3 is external alone. And as you can see here, there is no emphasis on knowledge. There is no emphasis on detail. There is no emphasis on that knowledge being part of something before they witness. And like we have said before, this number 3 could be the worst of all lies. That the testimony is just speech alone. And is the worst form of dhulm and oppression. And like I said before in the example that we gave, nobody would like for that to happen to us. If a person now has been wronged and a person comes across and puts an accusation against yourself and they didn't even witness it. And it's just by speech alone. And perhaps they might even gather a lot of evidence, etc. But they know it's not really knowledge-based. It's copied and pasted and it's etc. Therefore, the difference, the gulf between this one here and this one here are the conditions which are needed in order for that witnessing and the verbalization to be valid. Because on face value, there is no difference between a mu'min and a munafiq. He prays. He's got a beard, he's got a beard. She's got niqab, she's got niqab. He stops listening to music, and he stops listening to music. Allah knows best what is going on. And this is exactly at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. They were with him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Verbalization is there, verbalization is there. Witnessing is there, witnessing is there. The allegiances are there, but the biggest common factor here is the fact that there is no knowledge in number 3, and the people of Iman who witness correctly have ilm. This now, for the last hour or so, we've been looking at the the definitions. And you've got a grid there. I don't want to, you've probably already seen it, but you've got a grid there. Based on everything that we've talked about now, in order for a person to have La ilaha illallah, there are two things which are needed. What do you think those two things are? In order for these conditions to be there and valid, there are two things which are needed. Or there are two, or should I say, factors that must be there. In each one of these conditions, what do you think these two are?
One of them knowledge.
Okay, knowledge is one of the factors. Oh, sorry, knowledge is one of the conditions. But what I'm saying is each one of those 7 that we're going to have, there has to be factors which make sure that that condition is there. So now you've got knowledge. The example that you've given, I'm sure we've all have heard of the conditions of the Shahada already anyway. So we've got knowledge and yaqeen, mahabba, and etc. But in order for knowledge to be there, and certainty to be there, and acceptance to be there, and obedience to be there, and love and honesty and ikhlas to be there, there are two things which need to be in place in order for each one of those conditions to be valid. Excellent. And the sister's given the answer, which is negation and affirmation. So that's the answer for your grid there. So now, when a person is affirming La ilaha illallah with knowledge, there is affirmation with that knowledge and there is negation of jahl. When a person affirms La ilaha illallah with certainty, there is an affirmation as to what, and we will go into the details inshallah, hopefully tomorrow, what is knowledge and what is certainty, etc. But we will go into what is certainty to the best of our ability. Like I said, a lot of this is discussion for different books. We are just trying to give the principles and the evidence for those principles. So you need to be certain on La ilaha illallah. Here's the evidence, move on. But we'll try our best to talk about what is the knowledge that you need and what is the certainty that you need and what is the truthfulness that you need to have, etc. But here, you need to have the opposite negated. Why? Otherwise, as we have already established, the conditions won't be there. How do you have knowledge when there is still a little bit of ignorance? How can you have knowledge when your speech still has a little bit of kufr or shirk or doubt or mockery or insulting or enmity? All of these are the opposite. These are all negating factors of each one of them, or more, or maybe all. How can you have the affirmation of La ilaha illallah and that you say that you are fully obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and submitting to him subhanahu, inqiyad, in your actions, but internally there is a negation? Or a negation that you have certain actions which would remove that condition of being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, what we have established now are the conditions of what the conditions, the definition as to what the conditions are. We have established what is a testimony. We have established that there are other groups, and this is perhaps why you don't find the importance of this in our masajid and in our circles, who feel that La ilaha illallah is sufficient just by having some kind of knowledge and recognition behind it. But we will say, no, it's more. But we are also adding another factor, which is negation. وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولٍ أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهِ. If you stop there, then it is not sufficient. Every single nation had a Nabi come to them, telling them to worship Allah. What's the remainder? What's the remaining of this ayah? وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتِ. No Nabi came except that he told them to have Tawheed and to negate the opposite. Therefore, this statement that we are establishing here is a statement of negation and affirmation. The negation here is La ilaha. Nothing exists as a deity. Nothing exists in rububiyyah. Nothing exists in uluhiyyah. Nothing exists in asma wa sifat illallah, leaving everything away except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with these conditions that we are going to explain inshallah tomorrow. And each one of these conditions has the same criterion: negation, affirmation, negation, affirmation, as we will see inshallah. Okay, very quickly before we end today, as we said, and as I promised, is this something that we have made up? Now, a person will say, well, there's plenty of evidence for each one in the Quran, in the Sunnah. And perhaps you could do this one here, this task here for homework, because we're not going to have time. We've only got 10 minutes. Is it 10 minutes? How long have we got left? I don't want to make it too long. I think the people are getting tired now anyway. So I think 10, 15 minutes, inshallah. Unless if you want me to carry on, it's up to you. Anyhow, we could do this for homework. What are some of the virtues? Now, anybody could list the virtues here. I mean, and like I said, part of the course is that we make it interactive, that we learn from each other. I benefit from you as much as you benefit from the document here. And all of it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if we were here to talk about the virtues of the tahleel, not the, what's this, thaleel? With the spelling mistake there, if you want to just correct that. Tahleel. Tahleel is to say la ilaha illallah. Tahleel is to say la ilaha illallah. If we were to talk about the virtues of la ilaha illallah, we'd be here for a very long time. To the extent that Sheikh Salih al-Sheikh, one of our mashayikh in Riyadh, Hafidhullah, he said that there's nothing more emphasized in the Quran except the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every single ayah in the Quran has a direct meaning of the name of Allah, or one of his names of his attributes, or implicitly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why do you read the Quran and 6,000 ayat talk about Allah over and over and over and over and over again? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to recite the Quran so that our heart and our tongues and our actions constantly Allah, our creator, Allah, our master, the one that we submit to subhanahu. Therefore, the virtues of tahleel, you can't limit them. You really can't. And if we were to hear to talk about them, the virtues of la ilaha illallah, if we were to hear to talk about them, we'd be here for a very long time. That's why I think I just left this open. And all of these individually, together, act as dalil in themselves as to the fact that a person can't just say la ilaha illallah and expect that he has fulfilled the commandments of them. Because in each one of those ayat or hadith, you will find that there is a context, like we've just said now here. وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا يَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ. Every single nation had a messenger comes to say them, telling them to worship Allah, وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. Context here, which says negate the opposite. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ. Again, here, affirmation, negation. So every time that you look at la ilaha illallah in the Quran, we'll have something as a virtue, something that brings these conditions. But we need something more specific, because they could just say, well, this is your understanding, and it's not really mentioned from the Salaf, etc. So is there any proof from the Salaf for us to then say that la ilaha illallah, the testimony of the Shahada, needs to have conditions? Now, these are just 3 incidents, and again, we've kept it short, and they're all taken from a book from Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, and then we've got this bit here, which is another mas'ala, but this is the book that I'm trying to reference here at this moment. It is called Kalima al-Ikhlas wa Tawheed, and it's been written by Ibn Rajab. And in actual fact, I mean, I was just going over it the other day, I thought that book itself has the conditions of the 7 mentioned in them anyhow. Yes, he doesn't say number 1 is ilm, number 2 is yaqeen, etc. He doesn't say it like that, but he's got it in there because that's the haqq, that is the religion, that is our aqeedah. So in one way he will say, you know, you need to have la ilaha illallah, and then, with iman and yaqeen, and then another one would be with ikhlas, etc. And he'll bring dalil for each one. And within that book, he also, before he starts discussing the conditions, he establishes the fact that the Salaf gave importance to this. So now Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah was asked, if people say if you say La ilaha illallah, you will enter into Jannah. And this is like we were saying before. The Brevis that we live around, the Tiyubandis that we live around, the Tabligis that we live around, the Shia that we live around, all of them say, as long as you say La ilaha illallah, recognition, that is sufficient. Because all of those sects come from a school which is Murji. They come from a school which has irja. Except the Rawafid, except the Shia, you know, predominantly they are Mu'tazila and they are Takfiri and they are very political based and extreme. Again, that's a different discussion for a different day. But just to highlight here that most of the Ummah, they say that if you say La ilaha illallah, you will enter into Jannah. Al-Hasan al-Basri was asked this question about what the Muslims face today. 2 billion people in the world, most of them, they say, if you say La ilaha is sufficient. You don't need to have conditions. You just say La ilaha illallah. To the extent that I even know of a person, Allah al-Musta'an, he wanted to marry a non-Muslim. And he just told us, just say La ilaha illallah and we can get the nikah done. And she said it, she doesn't really believe in Islam. She said La ilaha illallah, the Mulana of the Masjid, you say La ilaha khalas, nikah, alhamdulillah. Allah al-Musta'an. Look at the playing, the making of zina even, Allah al-Musta'an. Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah said, Man qala la ilaha illallah, whoever says La ilaha illallah, fa'adda haqqaha wa fardaha dakhla al-jannah. Anybody who says La ilaha illallah, but he gives it its right and its obligations, not be mentioned here. You might even want to add that to, and its obligations. What does he mean by obligations? Its conditions. And if a person thinks, again, like we're making this up, go back 600, 800 years, 700 years-ish, Ibn Rajab has mentioned this in his book, rahimahullah. So it's not something that we're inventing here, that Ibn Baz said, oh, there's 7 conditions, where did the Salafis get this? Because they say this kind of stuff. Because they want to be satisfied with their irja. But we are saying, no, look, there's a precedence from the Salaf, and this understanding has an orthodox understanding which goes back. Go back 600, 700, 800 years, you've got Ibn Rajab. And even before that, I mean, you won't find a book which says here are the 7, 8 conditions. But Majmu' Fatawa Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Qayyim, I mean, there is ijma' on these points. These 7 that we're going to have, there is ijma' on these points. So some of the ulama who explain the shurut la ilaha illallah have stated there's ittifaq of Ahl Sunnah, because it goes back to an important asal and foundation, which is that Ahl Sunnah say that Iman is i'tiqad wa qawl and amal. Ahl Sunnah say that La ilaha illallah has to be internal and external. It has to be the thing that you believe in, it has to be the things that you say, and it has to be the things that we do. So Al-Hasan al-Basri is saying here, only if you fulfill its conditions and its obligations will you enter into Jannah. They are the people who will be part of that hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, Man qala la ilaha illallah, dakhal al-Jannah. Ibtigha wajhi, dakhal al-Jannah. Wa khalisin min qalbihi. And another narration, he says it with sincerity in his heart. There's another narration that he says it with a full level of yaqeen. There's another narration which says, he says it with truthfulness. Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, he brings these narrations. Now, if you look at this just one narration, whoever says La ilaha illallah, seeking Allah's face, he says it with certainty and he says it with truthfulness. Just in that one narration with its variation of wording, we have 3 conditions already been settled. Just with that one hadith. And Ibn Rajab is establishing that understanding for us. But before we move on, here is a very important point, which is Al-Hasan al-Basri is saying here that you need to give it its rights and its obligations. Now, again, like we said, this is a different discussion for a different book, but not everything is included in the rights of La ilaha illallah and the obligations. There are certain things which if a person does it, he'll get rewarded, but if he doesn't do it, he won't be sinful, and his iman doesn't decrease, it just doesn't increase, that's all. But there are certain things that he has to do in order for his La ilaha illallah to be established. And if he doesn't do them, then there will be no La ilaha illallah. And there are certain things which will need for him to do, is obligatory for him to do. And if he doesn't do them, he's still got La ilaha illallah, but is taken a battering. It's taken a battering. And this now here, again, like I said, it's a discussion for a different day, and I can see that the time is getting closer, and I'm very conscious of the fact that people have been sitting here for 1.5 hours and I've been talking all this time. But what we learn from this statement here of Hassan al-Basri rahimahullah is that if you say La ilaha illallah and you need to fulfill its conditions, there are certain things which there are no compromise in, and you need to learn those things in order for you to have the negation and affirmation. There's another narration from him, rahimahullah. He once saw a man burying his wife, and the man was crying, weeping, because he has lost his wife. So Hassan said to him, al-Basri, rahimahullah, what have you done to prepare for this day? So the man said, what do you mean? I've been saying La ilaha illallah for 70 years. Meaning I've been a Muslim for 70 years. And Hassan said to him, rahimahullah, what a wonderful way to prepare. However, it has conditions. So be careful of undoing the fortress that you have built. Meaning, this is the point of death now. You've lost your wife. If you go against some of the conditions of La ilaha illallah because of this calamity, or because of what you have left in your life in the coming days, and you don't fulfill the conditions, there could be an issue. So keep the fortress that you have built for yourself in Jannah and keep it intact, because La ilaha illallah has conditions. Al-Wahb bin Munabbih, another one from the Salaf, he was asked, aren't the keys to Jannah La ilaha illallah? He said, Bala, of course. The keys to Jannah are La ilaha illallah. Walakin ma min miftah illa lahu asnan. There is no key except that it has teeth. And if you come with a teeth, sorry, if you come with a key that has got teeth, futiha lak, then it can be used to open something. Wa illa lam yuftah lak. Then it will be blunt and you can't open anything. So we'll just stop here, but here's the confirmation. Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, he said that these ahadith, the ahadith that he talked about previously, these are not ahadith, these are narrations. These ahadith, the ayat that he mentions also in that book, Kalimat al-Ikhlas, rahimahullah, and these narrations talk about La ilaha illallah. And it's a means for a person to enter into Jannah and to be protected from the hellfire. And there are many narrations which are similar, but you can only actualize them. Look here, here's the golden bit here. If you have conditions and you remove the nullifiers, what is that? What was that grid that we filled in earlier? The conditions here now, he is talking about
Affirmation, negation.
affirmation, barakallah fiqh, and the nullifiers are the negations. So now when we are looking at the conditions of the Shahada La ilaha illallah, we have to also understand that they have opposites. If a person doesn't have these, then it entails that the person has missed out on these virtues because of the presence of the nullifier or nullifiers. And this is the view of Hassan al-Wahhab after he quoted these narrations. Meaning, if a person has any preventative, then he will not be classified as a person who's given a witness. He's got knowledge, he's got witnessing, he's got knowledge, but it's not sufficient. So he's got knowledge and he's verbalizing, but he's not witnessing, which is sufficient. So Ibn Rajab rahimahullah is saying here, if you've got a nullifier, it will nullify and undo everything. But this is another mas'ala. Shall we go into it or shall we stop? I think we should just do this one last thing, which is, this is a huge area of khilaf between the ulama. Do you need to have these conditions in order for you to be a Muslim? Meaning, if you know somebody who doubts, who's got an element of doubt, not doubt because he genuinely doubts, but doubts because of the fact that he lives in a world where people are putting in these doubts to this person. But if you ask him, say, no, I am a Muslim and I believe in Allah, but there is this tingling thing at the back of my head. Or a person who perhaps doesn't have as much as love as he's supposed to have towards Allah and this statement, La ilaha illallah, or knowledge, or certainty, or obedience, whatever it is that person a Muslim or not? Now, what is apparent from some of the statements of Hassan and Wahb, as we have seen here, this is what Ibn Rajab is saying, and this is what seems to be his view as well from Kalimat al-Ikhlas, is that if a person has any preventative that is not sufficient and it's najasa, and it nullifies it. However, Ibn Taymiyyah and others from the ulama have said, no, the testimony is enough. The testimony is enough for him to be classed as a Muslim. And if he hasn't got enough knowledge, and if he hasn't got enough, whatever condition that we think is deficient, we still treat him as a Muslim. فَعَامَةُ النَّاسِ إِذَا أَسْلَمُوا بَعْدَ كُفْرٍ, if they become Muslim after they were disbelievers, أَوْ وُلِدُوا الْإِسْلَامِ وَالْتَمِزُوا شَرَائِهِ, they hold firm to the religion, meaning they follow Islam, وَكَانُوا مِنْ أَهْلِ الطَّاعَةِ لِلَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, and they follow the general commandments, فَهُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ وَمَعَهُمْ إِيمَانٌ مُجْمَلٌ. Now this is important, because what Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah is saying here is that you have a general iman and a specific iman. So if a person testifies to La ilaha illallah, they've got general aspects of La ilaha illallah from the conditions. Yeah, no, I believe in one God and I don't want to make shirk with him, etc. They believe in those general, but then you might find him with an amulet, a ta'weez, a tamima, or you might find him, perhaps, doing something which could nullify his La ilaha illallah. We will say about that person, he has iman mujmal and he's still a Muslim. But they will only fall in to the haqiqat al-iman, something which is specific, something which actually brings iman to the heart and to the lives, if they have, like he says here, إِنَّمَا يَحْصُلْ شَيْئًا فَشَيْئًا إِنْ أَطَاعَهُمْ Allah لِذَلِكِ. That meaning they enter into Islam detail by detail, slowly and slowly, with those conditions and studying them further. And here, inshallah, we will stop, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us tawfiq and success. Likewise, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes this testimony something which is accepted with Him, and that we are of those who live by it with ilm and iman and yaqeen and certainty and truthfulness and love and submission. And likewise, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He keeps us firm on it and that He doesn't take this away from us. Likewise, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us the best of understanding of His religion and the ability to implement it. هذا والله أعلم وصلى اللهم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah, بإذن الله. Tomorrow we will look at the details of each 7, inshallah. What do some people groups accuse Imam al-Albani of irja? The reason why they say Shaykh al-Albani has irja, to the best of my knowledge, the reason why they say this is because he has some statements on legislation. This is to the best of my knowledge, because this is before my time, and I don't really get into these issues, but I do remember, some of these takfiri types, they say that Shaykh al-Albani has irja. And they don't just say that about him, but they say that about any mu'adhdham ulama, meaning most of our ulama, because of the fact that they say that we believe, this is what they claim, we believe that if you've got a Muslim ruler and he does something which is sinful, we have detached Tawheed of Allah from the action of the person. Because they believe in something which is called Tawheed al-Hakimi, meaning only Allah has the right to legislate. In al-Hukm Illallah, exactly what they said against Ali. And they revolted against Ali, and they even killed Ali, radiallahu anhu, the Khawarij, because of this very same statement. But Ahl Sunnah, we say, no. There are certain, like we've said before here, look, this is exactly the point that we were making earlier. Not everything is included in the conditions and the fara'id of La ilaha illallah. Look at the statement of Hassan al-Basri here. There are certain things which are needed in order, and it's imperative to have that as part of ilaha illallah. If you don't have that, then khalas, it's gone. It's gone. Your la ilaha illallah is finished. Allah protect us. But there are certain things which will reduce it, and there are certain things which will complete it. Now, if a person was to say, for example, riba-based banks in my country is halal, 100%, and I know what the Sharia says, but I think this is better. This is kufr. His la ilaha illallah is eradicated by this after a discussion has been made with him, etc. But if he believes that we need to have it in this country, I know it's bad, just like us regular Muslims. I know it's bad that I watch TV. I know it's bad that I listen to music. I know it's bad that I smoke cigarettes. I know it's bad that Allah protects us from all these things. I know it's bad, but I do it anyhow. Then we will still class him as a Muslim. We will still class him as a Muslim. So now this is what Albani was saying. This is what Bin Baz is saying. This is what Taymiyyah is saying. That look, even if he's got some mistakes and some sins and he's doing these things, you can't call him a disbeliever. So what they ended up saying is that Shaykh al-Albani is a murji and he has irja, wa na'udhu billah min dhalik. And I think that's the explanation. Wallahu a'lam. If scholars differ on the validity of the testimony with the 7 conditions, is certainty not naturally a necessity for the acceptance of Islam itself? I'm not sure I understand the question. If scholars differ on the validity of this testimony with the 7 conditions, is certainty not naturally a necessity? Okay, I think I know what you're saying. So now a person says La ilaha illallah, he has to be certain about it. Okay, but imagine now I even know of individuals like this, right? This atheistic da'wah is getting to them. But if you ask them, no, I believe in the oneness of Allah. I know it is true. I know it is true. I know it is true. I believe in the Quran. I believe in the Sunnah. I believe in these things. But there are certain things which I don't have an answer for. There is an element of doubt. Does that eradicate the person's La ilaha illallah? We will say, according to the correct view, bi'idhnillah, is no, it doesn't. But what we understand, at least from this, is that the Salaf saw that La ilaha illallah needs conditions. And perhaps there's a way of, marrying the two, in the sense that a person needs to remove these nullifiers and these preventatives to the best of their ability. Not every single preventative and nullifier with its presence would take away ma yalzam adamihi al-adam. It will necessitate that condition is not there. We will not say that necessarily. So perhaps there is a way of us combining the two. But the example that we can give of certainty, for example, is not absolute necessity, in the sense that there could be an element of doubt which could then reduce the amount of certainty. The Shaykh is saying here, وَمَعَهُمْ إِيمَانٌ مُجْمَلٌ. They still have general iman, because if you ask them, because that's what we go by. As the Shaykh is saying here in the Arabic here, we treat with what they have is what is apparent. And we try and give them a cure and try and, give them a solution and try and bring them back, and not necessarily just throw them away and say, look, this person's got element of doubt class. That's what the Takfiris do. That's what the Mu'tazila do. That's what these different sects do when it comes to, I don't want to go into it right now, but these different sects, they basically say these conditions are a must, absolute lazim, in order for the person to have La ilaha illallah. And if any one of these conditions are compromised, his iman is taken away. And this is precisely going back to that question earlier, is that they said legislation is a right of La ilaha illallah that belongs to Allah. And if a person takes even one aspect away, even sinfully, his La ilaha illallah is completely nullified. But what Ibn Taymiyyah is saying here, and the view of Ahl Sunnah in general, which is that these preventatives and nullifiers are of types. If it contradicts the condition of La ilaha illallah from its asl, from its origin, then it's gone. And that could be a word, that could be a statement, that could be an action. Sihr, gone. Leaving the salah, gone. A person, Allah tells us in the Quran, La taqulu thalatha, intahu, huwa khayrun lakum. Allah says, don't say a trinity, don't say thalatha. That's kufr in itself. So now a word is kufr. So we say there are certain statements and actions which are kufr. There are certain statements and actions and beliefs which are sinful and which are affecting his iman, but doesn't necessarily take away his iman. So that's why we were saying here, if a person has some areas which are not complete, bi'idhnillah, they are still Muslim, but we want them to come back. We don't want to throw them away into the hellfire like the Takfiris do and the Gullat do. Wallahu a'lam. Hope that's sufficient as an answer, bi'idhnillah. Khairan, inshallah. I think we will meet up again tomorrow, 10 o'clock, bi'idhnillah. We will be then going into the 7 individually with its evidences and what some of the ulama have said. Feel free to read through the document that you've got beforehand. That might give us actually a better more productive, actually, a session tomorrow, so that we can start thinking about what we want to get across tomorrow, and maybe some questions, and hopefully by preparing we can improve the efficiency and the output. That's just the general principle that we should have in our lives anyhow. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us tawfiq and success. هذا والله أعلم. صلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
Jazakallah khair, Ustadh, for your time. Inshallah, brothers and sisters, so tomorrow, inshallah, it's going to be the same time. 10 o'clock will be the class. If anyone came in late to the class, it will be available, inshallah, on the YouTube channel at Sunnah. Just go on to Sunnah Project UK on our YouTube channel. It should be made available, inshallah. So if anyone missed the class, they'll be able to catch up. Jazakallah khair. So it will be again tomorrow, same time, 10 o'clock, inshallah, with our teacher. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.